Precision listening is very similar to precision speaking. It's not only about why the communication is taking place, it's also about how something is being communicated. It is intently listening for what is not being said. It's looking for and understanding verbal and nonverbal cues. Empathetic listening is about conversation, not confrontation. It's a type of non-judgmental listening and allows for an open and respectful communication to take place. Empathetic listening also allows for silence, for a speaker to gather their thoughts and continue on. They allow the speaker to finish. Now, I find this personally and through observation the hardest part of active listening. We can help focus or direct what the other person might want to say next. However, this is not the time for our points or counterpoints. Reflexive leaders are not in a rush to speak and make our points or position known. They use the golden rule of actively listening 85% of the time, using precision and empathetic listening, asking the right questions 10% of the time, and synthesizing all that information for 5% of the time. Replication. Reflexive leaders use a mediation technique of repeating the other person's information by paraphrasing the speaker's key points. Rephrasing validates understanding, allowing the main points to remain the main points. Replication also avoids diversions or less relevant details from taking over the conversation. It also ensures your accuracy of understanding. And although it's not a questioning technique, restating main issues or ideas should be done approximately 10% of the time. It confirms you're not only listening and available and willing to have a clarity of understanding, but also validate the other person's point of view. Clarification. Clarification is usually used for an exchange of ideas, although it may also be used if you are unable to clearly identify the speaker's intent or reasoning. As we mentioned more than once, ambiguous or unclear communication leads to unresolved issues, real or perceived. Issues that remain after a conversation become a springboard for negative comments and criticism. In an exchange of ideas, reflexive leaders again use the right questions to draw people out, and they phrase questions in a positive to encourage them to grow those ideas. Again, borrowing from mediation, there are two different types of questions that are typically used for clarification. I call them the two F's: fact-finding and follow-up. Remember, we're actively listening, so as with replication, clarification is used only about 10% of the time. For fact finding, some conversations need us to determine particular facts or sequences or root causes. In those instances, this type of questions clarifies information on a particular subject or segment of the conversation. I know how frustrating it must be that that darn old copy machine broke down again. How many times this month has that machine broke? Follow-up. This type of question allows for additional information. Remember the 5 whys. It can also be used to have the speaker give their honest opinion. When used for opinion, it gives Reflexis leaders an opportunity to not only see, but more importantly, understand the other person's perception. Why do you think that happened? Or that's a different way of looking at things, whatever it might be. Why do you think it would work? And finally, summation. This is the final 5% of active listening. It is a summary of what you said, and most importantly, what you heard. If the conversation is for an exchange of ideas, develop timelines, or determine the delegation of a specific task, these responsibilities are reviewed and then restated. In other situations, the Reflexis leader will summarize what they understood the other person stated and the mutually agreed upon course of action. Now, it's been my experience that more times than not, after I stated or restated my understanding of the situation, the other person will do the same. If, however, they don't, a simple clarification follow-up question, do you think I've covered all the issues, or if I'm leaving anything out, will allow that person to also reflect and summarize the conversation. Remember, the goal of Reflexis leadership is to make all the components reflexive. It becomes something we do rather than something we think about and then stage. It's purposeful, and it provides a clarity of understanding and connects us to whoever the speaker is. This connection is the initial step in building honest and transparent communication and the groundwork for relationships. Now, a principal I once knew kind of missed that point. He used active listening as a tool. It was not something he practiced, nor really ever internalized. As he explained it, he read it on the internet, and it looked promising for keeping other people on track. So, when speaking with him, he would try and listen. He even started the conversation with telling you he would be using active listening techniques throughout the conversation. However, he always missed that overall overarching, essential element, connectedness. He would run through the process as if he had a checklist, really not understanding or appearing to care what was really being said. He would point out what should happen next and told people how to get the most out of this discussion. He unfortunately forgot the mantra: people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. He gave the perception, more often than not, of being condescending or arrogant, which of course was not his intention at all. The first four steps of reflexive leadership is about understanding who we are. It's about creating a clarity and transparency of understanding so that we can be available to others and build relationships that will facilitate communication and progress towards our mutual goals. Remember, we talked about being charismatic? Well, there is a downside to that charm. It's a perception that can be easily misinterpreted as slick or manipulative. Think about a multitude of politicians. Reflexive leadership strives for the perception that we are genuine and authentic leaders, motivated by our vision and connected to our goal of success or achievement for all students.